So thank you so much for the invitation, the introduction. We are incredibly excited to be here and talking about meeting rooms. Meeting rooms are fabulous. They're fantastic. They have a ton of power, a ton of capability. They can connect people. They can elevate ideas. They can also be kind of noisy. They can also be a little bit embarrassing and potentially distract from the very agendas that they were created to serve. We're going to talk about some of the good, the bad, the ugly, and why we are incredibly excited about kind of the state of the industry that we're in right now, and where things are heading. As we talk about return to work or return to the office, I want to tell you the tale of two town halls. A friend of mine works for a big IoT company in Boston, and they had a town hall in July where the CEO said, guys, this remote work stuff is incredible. We are loving it. We're more productive than I ever imagined we'd be in a remote setting. This is fantastic. People are doing great stuff together. I think we can do this long term, as long as we need to. I think we can do this, potentially forever. I don't know that we'll ever go back in the same capacity that we historically have. That was Town Hall 1. Again, this is the tale of two town halls. At the second town hall that they recently had in around February, he said, okay, real talk. I wasn't wrong in July. I was accurate. And I think part of why we had such great productivity happening, why remote work was working so well for us, is because we had a bunch of social capital in the bank. We've all been working together for years. We all, we're in close proximity for a long time, had the benefit of those relationships. And, we were all going through a global pandemic together. So we had a lot of grace with one another. But we're draining the bank accounts, team. We have depleted some of the good stored that we had built up, and now we need to get back. We need to get back together. We need to be in close proximity, kind of building those relationships and working. It's not going to be exactly like it was before. We're going to be a hybrid workforce, but we are going to have some expectation of a regular participation in the office. So I thought that was a really interesting kind of tidbit from a company up here in my neck of the woods in the Boston area of how they are thinking about and then preparing for. He was kind of the charge to get ready to come back to the office. I want to tell you about another friend of mine who is in IT, who recently said, Phil, man, feel really, really bad for you, and really even your company and your industry. I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, well, man, it must be rough for you. And I was like, again, I'm not following you. And he said, well, we all know that we can work from our computer now, so I don't think that people are going to do conference rooms near as much. I think we're just going to have everybody working from their cubicles. And I kind of laughed, and I was like, I appreciate your perspective, but I don't think we're going to go through all the trouble and the money and the investment of getting people back to the office just to have them sit in front of their desktop in their cubicle. Like, that's not. We don't get the benefit of the collaboration we do when we actually have people physically close together. Now, at the same time, we are not going to be able to put as many people in meeting rooms as we are used to putting in meeting rooms. A meeting room that was an 8-person meeting room is now going to be 3 or 4. A meeting room that was a 6-person room is now going to be 2 or 3. And we're going to have an expectation that if you're not in the meeting physically, you can still participate through the use of technology. My wife works for a 30,000 person company, and her boss has already said, hey, as we get ready to return to the office, I have no expectation that you're going to commute back into Boston 5 days a week. I'm thinking it's more, kind of in that realm of, 4 days every couple of weeks that we have an expectation that you would be here and participate. And my wife is, that's exciting. Like she really hopes that that's the case, and that's the intention of her boss. But she has the worry or the anxiety around, okay, but what are the meeting rooms going to be like? Because right now they just have, majority of our meeting rooms just have star phones on the table, and that's not an equitable experience. I can't actually participate to the degree that I have been participating from my remote workstation. If there's a couple people that are in the office, and they're going to have a better experience unless we improve our technology. And what we're seeing in the marketplace is really 80% of meeting spaces do not currently have video conference. So good news, everybody adopted video. We've all been remote working, and that's been incredible. Bad news, as we migrate people back to the workplace, we really have a lot of work to do to get our video spaces ready for that hybrid type of equity, where the people in the room have the same level of experience as the people that are remote, and we have that same equitable kind of shared voice, for everybody, whether they're in the room or not in the room. So I want to share with you, I want to dive right into talking about room solutions. Again, the good, the bad, the ugly. And when Troy invited me to participate in this webinar, it made me think about the opportunity that Troy and I met on. It was a large RFP in the Mid-Atlantic area. And this was a customer who had about 60 meeting rooms. And, this is a snapshot. These are 3 of the meeting rooms that they had. And I went ahead and I zoomed in on the user interfaces in these 3 meeting rooms, because this is part of the reason why they decided to do a complete start over, start from the ground up. The user interfaces here, you can see there's 3 different Crestron touch panels for these 3 rooms. They're physically different. One of them is a 7-inch touch panel, one of them is a 10-inch touch panel, and then the one all the way to the right is a 13-inch touch panel. And you can see that, even though they're all Crestron, people would be like, oh, we have a common user interface, we use Crestron. That's not fair. You can't have the same page layout on a 7-inch touch panel that you do on a 13-inch touch panel. You can't have the same button labels. You can't have the same page flips. It's not the same canvas. So even if it is a Crestron touch panel, it is a different user interface, and your user has to learn and be able to navigate multiple different user interfaces, and that was unacceptable. That they weren't able to stomach that moving forward, and they said, hey, we want to have a more standard, a more common user interface. And then I want to also show you the rack it takes for each of these rooms to run. So this was the existing rack in all of these rooms before we got started. And that's a lot of equipment. You can see even there in that small room all the way to the left, there's a significant investment in boxes, in black boxes it takes to make that room happen. And consequently, there's a decent amount of points of failure that are inherent there in that system. So as you can imagine, we have a different approach. We approach things differently. And I want to introduce you all to a different approach. I want you to think differently about how you roll out meeting spaces. So I want to introduce my company RoomReady and a different thought process. So let's jump back to the pictures of the rooms, and you can still see the same 3 rooms up top. Those same 3 rooms, the after picture, spoiler alert, we won the RFP. Those are those same 3 rooms in the bottom pictures. And then to be fair, I wanted to go ahead and zoom in like I did previously on the Crestron touch panels. And I want to show you that we put a literal same touch panel in all 3 rooms. It is literally the Cisco Touch 10 touch panel, about to be the Cisco Navigator as that releases, but the same Cisco user interface. And I want to talk a moment about the uniqueness of that, because for this RFP, we were the only respondent that said we can put the Cisco Touch 10 in a literal every room. The divisible rooms, the board rooms, the small rooms. Every other respondent said, hey, I'll put the Cisco Touch 10 in the smaller rooms, but then when we get to the boardroom or we get to a divisible room, then I'm going to have to go ahead and use a Crestron touch panel, and it'll be fine. It'll look just like the Cisco. I can program it to look just like the Cisco. I can write code for each of those big fancy rooms to make it look similar, but we're going to have to go with a Crestron controller because it gives us more versatility. False. So we were the only AV integrator that responded to this and said, no, literal, you don't get it. We want to put the Cisco Touch 10 in every space. And I want to just kind of compare again, so you see like, hey, these are the Crestron user interfaces. This is the Cisco. Well, what's the big difference, Phil? They're going to, other AV integrators sell on, Crestron's ability to customize, to put any button you want on that touch panel, and they're right. That is what you can do with a Crestron touch panel. The big gotcha there is now you are writing independent code for any room that has a Crestron touch panel on it. There is a controller running that code that you have to update code and push to. So why does that matter, Phil? Well, that matters because you all have iPhones, right? I actually left mine sitting somewhere else, but imagine I'm holding my iPhone. You have an iPhone, you have an Android phone, whatever smartphone you have, that phone gets better all the time. 6 months from today, you're going to have a better user experience on that phone. It's going to be updated with new features, and it just happens. You don't have to pay anything extra for that. It's just part of owning that piece of hardware, and then the software continually gets better on it. The same thing should be true of your meeting rooms. Your meeting rooms should get better over time, but if you have deployed Crestron code in those meeting rooms, they are locked into that code unless you want to repay to engage an AV integrator to come and to update the code. Now you're like, Phil, you're hating on Crestron. Nope, not at all. We have invested heavily in Crestron programming resources. We have that capability. We have that on staff. I actually have a diamond level Crestron programmer on staff at RoomReady. There's 5 of those in the world. So we've invested heavily. We just want it to be put in the appropriate place to make your meeting room strategy be the right one for your organization. And it's not out front. It's not at the core of the room solution, and it's not at the user interface. It's for controlling other business use cases that would be added to that room. So I think it's important to just start off there. So we've talked about some of the opportunities that we have. We talked about that quick case study, and now I want to just kind of realize that there are some significant underlying apprehensions, some potential problems when we think about deploying and catching up with the 80% of meeting rooms that don't have video in them today. And when we think about, man, could we actually deploy video across the rest of our meeting rooms? You have this, kind of nagging voice in the back that says like our users lack confidence in room solutions. They're nervous. They've failed in front of their peers before, and it's not worth the risk. They don't want to fail in front of their peers. And I don't know if you've ever had that experience. I have, ironically enough, when I went to present to that company that I showed you in the case study. I got there early as a vendor to present, what we were thinking about doing for the RFP. It was in one of their big training rooms. I got there early. I set up my laptop and I started to try and figure out how to get everything going. And somebody said, no, you're going to have to wait until Sally gets here. And I was like, what do you mean? And they said, well, the buttons don't actually do what you think they should do, and no one really knows how to use this room except for Sally. Sally's our expert on this room. You're going to have to wait for her. Obviously, I was in the right place, but what? It totally made me nervous. Like, the meeting room doesn't work the way it's supposed to. Are the people that are calling in remotely actually going to be able to follow my presentation? Am I set up for failure? It was super distracting, and that's not an abnormal or uncommon experience. So I want to dive right in, and I want to talk about that. I also want to tell you I don't have a magic bullet. I don't have an easy, quick fix. I can't snap my fingers. This isn't a genie type solution, but it is an elegant shift. And I mean elegant in the math sense of the word. I mean elegant as like simplifying or stripping down And I want to talk about an elegant shift in our attitude towards meeting room technology and how we are designing and setting ourselves up to succeed in meeting rooms. I actually asked for this slide to be made 6 years ago now. So this methodology is not new to RoomReady. This isn't like, hey, this is our flavor of the year. Like we're trying this thing out. We have been doing this for years and years and years. And I want to, real quick, kind of walk through that left side of the diagram, because that's the traditional approach to how AV integrators design rooms. On the top, the purple box you'll see there, it says digital matrix or video matrix, and that's going to be a third-party type of device. That's going to be a Crestron, AMX, Extron digital matrix. Off to the right, you'll see the gray box. That's a controller. Sometimes it's part of the digital matrix box. Sometimes it's a separate box, but there's some type of controller that is involved in the system. Then you'll see the video codec is kind of treated like a peripheral there, along with the audio DSP. This is the traditional design that we find everywhere. I was doing a site survey in a building that is less than 2 years old. So if you lose a year to COVID, this design was only in there for 6 to 9 months. The box on top in the rack there is a digital matrix, just like my drawing. Towards the bottom, you'll see a Crestron C3PN. That's the controller. There's the audio DSP with the little red in it. Kind of tucked back under the audio DSP is the video codec. This room example was a poly room. And then there's a Barco, because they valued wireless sharing, and you needed that to pair along with the Barco. And they've invested $40,000 in equipment for this room. And if you say, well, Phil, it's kind of a big room. There's a lot of potential that we would need technology to support. Okay, that's fine. So let's do a little stroll across the hallway, because if you stroll across the hallway, you're going to find a whopping 6-person room and a same $40,000 equipment rack full of boxes and potential points of failure. Yikes. And again, this is not like, hey, this is Monday. I was at a site that this was installed less than 2 years ago. So this is new. How people are designing and installing room solutions today. And it's problematic. There's a lot of risk there. There's a lot of confusion for users, and there's points of failure that are inherently part of that system. So if we think about an elegant shift, I want to invite you to think about the design there on the right. We take a very codec-centric approach to room design, and we're going to try and put the codec as the core of the room solution. And I want you to notice the words behind display. And then on the other one, in the traditional, you'll see equipment rack. And we just saw a couple equipment racks that were, one of them was in the hallway outside of that small meeting room. And RoomReady has a tool in our tool belt that's pretty unique. It's not how we have to do rooms. I can still use equipment racks if you're an architect, or if your room calls for an equipment rack based on layout or aesthetic. That's fine. I can still do that. But I have another tool in my tool belt that we call the RoomReady set. It's our not so secret weapon. So we actually invented this, we patented it, we brought it to market, and it is an incredible tool in our toolbox. We're going to go ahead and mount equipment behind a large format display. We're going to just kind of tuck it in there so that we can keep all the equipment close together. Well, what does that do for us? It removes points of failure, and it removes expensive items from the bill of materials. If you have equipment sitting off in a rack somewhere, then you're going to need transmitters and receivers to convert the video signals from HDMI to Cat6 to go the longer kind of run through the wall, and back into the display, from the codec, the camera back into the codec. And there's going to be extra costs and points of failure there. So also there's a lot of labor to pull all those cables through pathways and to get everything pulled and put in the right place. if we can pre-stage this or pre-assemble this in our assembly facility, it saves us a lot of time on site and expense in labor, as well as those costly items in the bill of materials and potential points of failure. And so I want to show you what this looks like actually in a room. So this is up on a wall, and you can see there's large format displays, and the displays will actually pull away. They'll articulate so that you can get behind and service. Again, not something I have to do in every room, but it is a pretty awesome tool that we have in our tool belt that we invented, patented, and have brought to the marketplace. So I want to go back up real quick, and I want to look at this design for just a moment longer. And I want to, note that, hey, if we have a codec-centric approach, and this is our base design, this is like, when we order, we'll talk about menus later. When we order off a menu, this is the menu item that we're looking at. And you might say, well, I feel a little spicy tonight, or I have a taste for something a little extra. For instance, I have a boardroom table that has 12 microphones, and the Cisco codec only has 8 microphone inputs. Ha, gotcha. Nope, that's easy. We're just going to add a quick sidecar. We're going to add a little spice, a little audio DSP. We're going to very simply and easily take care of that real business use case that you had, and we still keep a very scalable base design that carries that same Cisco Touch 10 user interface so that your user gets comfortable with it. So I'm going to go ahead and I want to kind of put my money where my mouth is, and I want to show you in the wild, real life example of a conference room that traditionally people would look at as a very complex room. And this is incredibly simple when you approach it with the RoomReady methodology. So again, we're sticking equipment behind those large format displays. If I pull the displays off and we look at it, I am showing you every piece of equipment it takes to run this room. There's no credenza, there's no equipment closet down the hallway with equipment. Everything is right there. You'll see the RoomKit Pro. There was only 8 microphones that we needed. We used the Cisco table mics. They went directly into the RoomKit Pro. We have an HDMI DA so that we can mirror the signal from the content display up front to the confidence monitor on the side. And we have a camera extender to extend the signal to the camera. And we have an amp to power the speakers. So that big fancy boardroom is actually a very simple user experience is the Touch 10, and users can be confident when they leave the huddle room and they walk into this big room, they're going to be greeted with the same experience that they have built confidence using elsewhere. I want to revisit, for the sake of just simplicity, I want to revisit the top left image there. You'll see is that small conference room that I pointed out that had all that full rack of equipment. Again, like $40,000 worth of equipment for that 6-person conference room. And then I want to show you 3 other really elegant Cisco spaces right there. So when you're looking at that, you can see that there's a couple different offerings. So they're all in one, or virtually all-in-one solutions. You have on the upper right, I had to add a third-party display, so that's not technically an all-in-one solution, but the Room 55 right next to it and the WebEx board 55 right there. All of those are sub $15,000 rooms that would kind of directly compete with that other medium-sized conference room. So there is a lot of room to have really fantastic solutions and figure out what the right menu item is for you. So let's revisit those big problems. If we look at this and we say, okay, again, no magic bullet, no quick fix, but we made progress, right? If we can remove points of failure, so users can be consistently successful in a room, rooms aren't down all the time, we can start to build trust back with our users, especially if they also have the same user interface, whether you're in a 4-way divisible room, whether you're in a boardroom, a medium room, huddle room. If every room your user walks in, it is the exact same panel that gets better over time, that is continuing to evolve and provide better functionality to them, you're going to build a lot of trust with your users, and you're going to increase adoption significantly. And you're going to say, okay, so let's move from that one, but then let's jump to the next one, because if we start to increase our video footprint, right now support seems unmanageable. We don't have standards in place. It can seem a little bit tricky, and you're right. So I want to talk about how we're going to address support, but I want to talk about two different ways of thinking here on support. So let's think about our new rooms. I want to tell you a story about a customer that I'm getting ready to do a room solution with, and he said, "Hey, I want to hear about a reference from you." So I gave him contact info for another customer of mine named Danny, and he called Danny. They had a meeting. Danny and I caught up a few days later. Danny's getting ready to do a new floor of rooms, and so he wanted to talk about some things on that. And he goes, "Hey, I talked to your buddy Ed. I don't think he really gets what you're about to do." And I was like, "Well, I hope he gets what I'm about to do, because he's going to give me a PO for a couple rooms, and that'll be uncomfortable if he doesn't really understand it. What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, he said, hey, Danny, it's good to hear about the deployment, the installation, and the user experience, but I really need to understand how RoomReady does with support." And Danny said, "Oh, well, great, but you're not really going to need much." And so I'm kind of shooting myself here in the foot a little bit here, but he goes, "Well, what do you mean I'm not going to need much?" And Danny goes, "They're about to take all the AV stuff out. You're not going to need much support." And the guy goes, "No, they're about to put a couple new rooms in for me." And Danny goes, "Right, but they're going to put in a Cisco codec, they're going to put in a display, and you're going to have a couple microphones. Not much is going to go wrong." And the guy was pretty quiet, and Danny goes, "Look, I've had rooms like this installed for years. Cisco codec doesn't fail. I don't have failures with that. I've had 2 displays fail in the last 3 years. RoomReady's great. They pick up the phone. They're very responsive. You're just not going to need them very much." So super high compliment, and I was excited about that. At the same time, I do realize I'm shooting myself a little bit in the foot for net new installs. There's really not a ton that can go wrong with these rooms. They're very bulletproof. However, I'm not under the assumption that you're going to rip and replace and buy all new technology for all of your rooms tomorrow. You're going to have legacy rooms that need support. And to that end, I do think that we approach it quite a bit more elegantly than you've probably experienced approaching and supporting AV equipment in the past. So historically, people have an expectation that they don't really have AV people on staff, right? You have IT people, and IT people aren't super familiar with those big AV Crestron boxes and Crestron code and all that type of stuff. So oftentimes when people think about, well, what type of level of support do we need, they tend to think, well, we need to invest in a response where we're expecting an AV person to come and resolve every ticket. So they say we need to have 4-hour or next day response for all of our rooms, and we're expecting an AV person to come in and fix it. And the price tag on that is astronomical. There's got to be a more elegant way, and you're right. There is. So we want to approach it with kind of a 3 simultaneous effort approach, with the first one maybe just leading the pack a smidge. So we want to do a room assessment of all of your existing AV rooms. We recently took over management for a large financial customer up here in the Northeast, and they told us they had 324 rooms. I say they told us they had because we actually went out to all of their sites. We got in every room, and when we were going through the rooms and we were, making friends with the people on site, they would say, "Hey, you haven't asked to see Steve's room." What do you mean we haven't asked to see Steve's room? Well, you looked at all of the other rooms, but we haven't showed you Steve's. Do you want to see Steve's? Sure. Yeah. Let's go see Steve's room. So we would go in, and it turns out there were some rogues within the company. There were some Steves that built their own room for their own business unit, and they never told IT about it. So we actually found 346 rooms that we onboarded and documented, and we did the assessment for over and above what they thought that they had. So we want to get in every room, and when we get in and we do this assessment, we're going to go in and we're going to take pictures of everything. We're going to test every port on every box. We're going to figure out what the line drawing currently is, not necessarily what was installed, but what it is today. We are going to understand that room before we leave. And that's going to set us up for success as we are simultaneously standing up a support desk. Now, again, historically, you don't have IT people even in every one of your locations. And so if something goes wrong, that really thorough documentation is going to allow us to take a call from, the person you designate in that building or at that location, and they're going to say, hey, we opened up a ticket for this room, and we're going to say great, and we're going to start a WebEx with them, and we're going to say, is this the room? And they're going to say, yeah, that's my room, and then we're going to flip to another picture, and we're going to say, this is where your equipment closet is, and they're going to be like, yeah, that's right on. And we're going to say, okay, we're going to put an arrow in, and we're going to say, this box, we need you to go look and tell us what lights you see on that box. It's got this logo on it. They're going to look at that box. We're going to say, great, the light that should have been flashing isn't. Please go ahead and reboot that box. And we can resolve so many issues without actually sending boots on the ground to get in that room, and we can resolve them quicker when we have that thorough documentation that is empowering to your people that are on site there. So that's going to be important. Legacy room assessment, standing up a support desk with very knowledgeable, kind people that are armed with all of the appropriate information. And then in your incredibly dense locations, HQ type locations, where you have like 20 plus rooms in a building, we're going to suggest that we put in an embedded support tech at that facility, maybe 2, depending on how many rooms you have, so that they can offer some type of white glove service to the people that you really want them to offer that to, and they're also there for when you're updating software. They're providing lunch and learns. They're helping people feel confident and comfortable and excited about the technology that's in place. And making sure that any issues that pop up are resolved incredibly quickly. So again, we're going to approach it with this simultaneous 3-pronged effort that we think is a better approach, a more elegant way to look at supporting. So if you think, okay, we're building some confidence with our users. Our users have a high expectation that they can be successful in room solutions, so they're using more. We have our rooms booked out. We have a very supportable model where we're confident that if an issue does arise, we can take care of it quickly. Well, at that point in time, you have a really lovely foundation built to scale, to add more rooms. And when you do think about that, when you think about scaling or adding more rooms, again, I want you to think about ordering off a menu. It doesn't have to be as complex as saying, man, what am I in the mood for? What taste do I have? How do I want that prepared? No, you say, hey, I know this menu item is fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to order it. And then if you want a little spicy, we're still going to sit down with you and we're going to talk about how we get there. I want to let you know that we are, again, a traditional AV integrator. We can offer everything from consultation, system design, programming, all the way down through, service and support. All of those offerings we have, but we go about them in a little bit of a different way that we call the RoomReady way. And I want to tell you why and how that is different. We realize that our approach isn't standard, isn't common, and so it might not be for everyone. Yeah.
I'm going to stop and ask a question right now, because a lot of our customers already have partners.
Yeah.
So are we saying that you would displace those partners, or how does RoomReady, I already know the answer, but how does RoomReady usually work in those scenarios?
Yeah, no, super good question. So we are oftentimes able to support you through your existing partner. So if you're ordering from an IT VAR and you're used to getting your Cisco endpoints that way, that's fantastic. We would tell you to go ahead and keep ordering through them. And oftentimes we are already set up with that VAR so that you can order us on their paper, or you can just continue ordering your Cisco endpoints through them, and then you can start a direct relationship with us. Depending on procurement, sometimes it's easier through an existing VAR and not bringing on a new vendor, and sometimes it is actually easier to just bring on a new vendor. So that's totally up to the end user.
All right, thanks, Phil. Sorry if I interrupted.
No, that's right on. Super good question, and very relevant, because procurement is its own beast, right? Figuring out and understanding, like, how do I buy something, that might shut the door on it before you ever can even really think about opening the door. So thanks, Joe, for interrupting. I really appreciate that. So we want to have an exploration conversation. We want to understand, things that are common and in your environment right now. Things like, hey, our users really hate ceiling mics. We've never had good luck with them. We really prefer table mics. We want to understand that early. Hey, our users really appreciate the wireless sharing option that is available through the Cisco endpoints. We want to know that, and know that that's your preferred sharing model. And then we're going to personalize rooms and start to build that way of creating room designs that really is personalized to how you like it. Then when we have the room solutions ready for you to say, yeah, I want one of these, I want two of these, we're going to start to assemble them ahead of time. Again, we want to put everything together in our assembly facility. We want to pre-cut and label every cable. We want to check every port. We want to look at every pixel. We want to pre-package the solutions as much as we can before we bring them to you, so that we are in your space for as little amount of time as possible. We know that your rooms are production rooms. They're important to you. People are using them. The more time we're in your room, the less time you're getting the value out of the room. So we're going to be in and out as quick as we can. We're going to ship the assembled gear to site. We're going to meet it there, so you don't have to manage it, and know where you put it. We're going to accept the delivery from our lead technician when we get on site, and then we're going to get to work. From there, we're going to make sure that the room is certified. We're going to walk your sign-off agent through the statement of work. We're going to show them how we accomplished everything the statement of work said we would. And then we're going to make sure that room is certified, and then it is ready to be improved upon over time. Again, the way that we design rooms, we expect that Cisco is going to push out updates, and we want you to be able to take advantage of those updates as often as they push them out, and that your users can take advantage of the updates and the better experience that is coming out. And then we put together menus. We already have a starting point. We're not starting from scratch with you. We already have a starting point that's like 80% of the way there. We're going to talk with you about some of those personalized items that you have already have an opinion on. And do you have a room computer? Do you not have a room computer in your design? Those types of things. And then we're going to say, hey, here's what we think a huddle room is: a small, medium, large, extra large, training, divisible, executive space, collaborative space, whatever that looks like for you. And then it's going to be incredibly simple to say, I want one of these, two of these, three of these. We're still going to do a really quick, 15-minute touch point. I recently had a customer up here in the Boston area. We have a standard huddle room offering for them. They said, hey, I want you to put 2 huddle rooms in this existing building. And I said, great, can you just send me real quick pictures of the room that they're going to go in? They did, and I noticed there was no floor core. And so I said, hey, this room's a little spicier than just the menu item. I need to put like an over-the-floor raceway unless you want to go ahead and add a floor core. They said, no, it's a ground level spot. You're right on. Thank you. And having the picture just gave us the ability to not get on site and then be surprised, so that we could adapt that the right way. So I've talked a lot about some of those underlying, just kind of baseline things. And now I want to talk specifically to something that we're all getting ready to experience. It's a problem that's always been there, but it is a lot more in our face in 2021, where everybody went home. They adopted video. They're using video on their PCs, and they're having back-to-back-to-back meetings on different meeting platforms. And they're going to expect that their room solution can handle that in a similar fashion to their personal device. So I want to talk real quick about controlling what you can control. And then I want to talk about how you can still take some ownership over things that you can't control. So I'm assuming that if you're on this call, likely WebEx is the platform that you have adopted as your primary platform for your organization. But let's say Larry went home and then went rogue, and he started using Microsoft Teams, and then the whole marketing team followed Larry's example. So your company's primary platform is WebEx, but there's this business unit that is now using a different meeting platform. Well, internal to your organization, Cisco has really done some great things. They've built a CVI, a Cloud Video Interop, and you can take advantage of that licensing. And so if someone internal to your organization sends a Microsoft Teams meeting invite, and you have CVI in place, that SIP address will flow through the meeting invite. Your room endpoint will pick it up, and you can very elegantly join another meeting platform's meeting internal to your organization. And I keep referencing internal into this example because you cannot control people outside of your organization. So even if you have purchased the CVI licenses, if your marketing agency also sends an invite with Microsoft Teams, now external to your organization, separate agency, they send it in, and they haven't invested in CVI, your CVI does not cover them. So you need to have another kind of thing in your back pocket that's going to help your user still be successful in the room, and that would be a USB solution. So we can put in a USB solution that you can bring your own meeting, bring your own device, and that can happen through a room computer if that's something that's common in your enterprise, or through people's personal devices. So now the personal device is essentially going to be the soft codec for the room, but that USB connection is going to allow the room components to now serve that meeting. So the room camera, the screens that are in the room will now, kind of mirror your device screens. The microphones for the room will still work to support your meeting that's happening on your personal device that is the soft codec for the room. So, with just a little bit more investment into the rooms that you've already invested pretty significantly in, we can put something in place that your users can elegantly still accept and use the room components to serve for that external meeting. I want to talk for just another moment about our expertise. I know that a lot of times you wonder, like, hey, have you ever worked with companies like us? There are things for financial companies that are important to them because of security protocols and things that they have to follow. It's funny, law firms don't care if I have done any other big financial or if I have done a big retail company. They only want to know, do you have legal and law firm expertise? The answer is yes. Pharmaceutical, higher education, they want to know, do you know how to mount things on cinder block? Because that's important in that industry. So we want to let you know we do have deep industry expertise, and we can absolutely make sure that we are taking the things that you care about into consideration as we are getting ready to design and then ultimately deploy and support your rooms. And then I want to say this is kind of silly in some ways that you have to say this, but I had a customer recently say, hey, Phil, this all sounds really good, but talk to me about your punch list process. And I was like, I don't mean to be a jerk, but I don't have a punch list process. And he goes, well, what do you do when you get done with an install and there's still punch list items? How do you navigate those? And I was like, well, with all due respect, we're not done with the install if there's punch list items. Like if there are things that are not done or not working right, we're not done, and we don't leave until we're done. And I know that that's a little bit different That's not something that is common in the AV industry. They're typically our punch lists. They're typically things that are kind of painful. One customer that I recently won over, they had an install happen a year ago, and that AV integrator was in there every week, and not because they were just there to say hi, but because they had ongoing issues for the whole year that they had to come in and work on afterwards before I took over. So RoomReady promises we don't leave until you sign off. We actually did stand up a landing page on our website specifically for this webinar. So if you're curious about some of the things I talked about, if you want to see some further case studies, if you want to see a gallery of rooms that we have done, I would invite you to go there, interact with us, let us know what you found helpful. If there's anything you want more information on, there's a way for you to give us your information and say, hey, I would love follow up on XYZ. My email address is on there. I have a partner in crime named Casey. Her email address is on there. We work very closely together. Please feel free to email one or both of us. And then my cell phone number is there. If you would like to have a conversation, I would love to chat with you. And we wanted to leave some time for questions. So fire away.
Yeah, Phil, I've got a few that people have messaged me, so I'll go ahead and ask them. Try to test your ability. So
That's good. That's good. Yeah.
So the pushback I get from Crestron support people, and I used to support Crestron.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of RoomReady because of it.
Yeah.
And I know you guys know the place of where it can be valuable, so I'm not going to dive into that. But I'd love to talk to you about that offline sometime. But wireless touch panels, like Cisco does not have a wireless touch panel. What do you do in that scenario? What do you advise the customer?
It's a super good question. We actually we brought to the market a wall-mounted option for the Cisco touch panel. So we actually have an in-wall mount where you can mount the Cisco touch panel, and we leverage that as hey, you have movable furniture, and so we have the Cisco touch panel up on the wall. We can also program an X panel for you. If you have a room that has movable furniture and you need some extra control, we can absolutely, again, I mentioned we have invested heavily in Crestron. We just don't think it needs to be your standard. We don't think it has to be for every room. So if you have a room where you need wireless control, the wall mount Touch 10 is not enough for you, then absolutely we can go ahead and we can put that control in a wireless Crestron touch panel to take care of that space.
Thank you. That's a great answer. And then the other thing I hear about is Crestron has a really nice feature called Crestron Fusion, which I'm sure you're aware of, where they can see, and AMX has a similar thing, so it's industry common, where they can see the touch panel and control it remotely. I used to use it, and it was valuable. Cisco doesn't have that for our touch panels. So what do you say to that?
Yeah, you actually do have some things, not necessarily specific to the touch panel, but through Control Hub, you can go in and you can affect things on the endpoint. It's not the exact, you're not looking at the touch panel, but you can turn on and off speaker track. You can turn up and down the volume. You can do some of those types of things as endpoint control, in the background. So we would still say, hey, we would still leverage that on the Cisco control side of things. And again, if you're like, but Phil, I need more minute control for this specific room. This is our boardroom. This is our training room. We need a person to sit in a back kind of closet and control everything. That's great. We can absolutely do that. And we can put a Cisco touch panel in the room still, so that they can feel confident if a user just happens to walk in and book the room and use it. They can go that way too.
All right, thank you, Phil. And what I'll do now, I'll allow attendees to unmute themselves. I do have another question. I just want people to get queued up. So if you're listening, you got a question, you can ask yourself. There's one here written that I'll ask about, and that is explain the USB mode. And I'll start off by answering that, and then let Phil finish. But on our RoomKit Minis and our Desk Pro, we have the ability to use USB-C to plug into the computer, and then all of a sudden the microphone, the camera, and the speakers, and with the RoomKit Mini use the HDMI input output too, everything there is being used on from your computer on that video device. And the whole idea of bring your own meetings for that is, I had to join a Google meeting or meet the other day, and I used my Desk Pro's camera, high quality camera. I still had noise reduction capability. I didn't have to natively connect through my Desk Pro on a SIP call to Google Meet when they don't support it. So that's one of the things that customers ask us about. How do I use my camera, my microphones, my speakers in this room off of my PC so that the user walks in and they get, they're able to do that. And that's what Phil was referring to related to USB mode.
Yeah, so above and beyond that, that's great for those two that it's endpoints that it's built into. But your BU has actually done some really incredible things with, like the Room Kit, for instance. There's not an ability for a USB to come directly out of the Room Kit, but they've enabled some things on like the 3.5 jack where I can grab the audio out of the Room Kit, and then I can plug in another box. There is another box that I'm going to have to plug in, but essentially, even if it's a Room Kit, a Room Kit Plus, a Room Kit Pro, I can add one more box to it, and then all of those peripherals will come out through an available USB-C cable. So we can.
Which devices can you do it with? Is it all the current products?
Yeah.
And what about the legacy? The SXs, people have the SX20 still.
Yeah. The SX, I'm 85% sure I would be fine with an XX20, but that's a little bit of its own minefield. But yeah, definitely all the MX units I could do that with. On the SX and MX units, I might need to add a DSP. So I might need two boxes, but the same methodology would still be there. I can absolutely navigate that.
Taking advantage of the speaker track and all that stuff, and using the Touch 10, correct?
Yep. Yeah, right on. Some of the things in the Touch 10 would still be relevant. Speaker track, turn on and off. Meeting dialing would not be in the Touch 10 anymore. Once you would plug in your soft codec, now you would actually be launching the meeting from the web browser on your personal device, and then the Touch 10 would be there to facilitate some of the room items like the camera. You can zoom in, zoom out, some of those types of things you would still control on the Touch 10, but your device would then be the controller. These are really good questions. Thank you. I appreciate the engagement. This is exciting. Means people were actually listening all the way to the end of the presentation. That's they hung in there with me.
Your opinion, Phil, on this is an opinion question. This is my question.
Okay.
When you do any type of integration,
yeah.
say if you do a custom, the problem we have is updating software.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So with your guys' integrations, do you typically tell the customers, hey, keep this registered on-prem to Communications Manager so you can control the software updates? Or do you say, no, it's okay to go ahead and go to the cloud, and we upgrade, if you're registered to the cloud, it updates automatically. It's not an issue for any customer unless they have an integration on-prem, right? Yeah,
so that's not a super straightforward question. I'm going to answer it as directly as I can. Some of that depends on what is happening in the customer's environment. For sure, cloud registering, it works, and it works really well. That case study I showed you in the beginning, it was from a client 3 years ago, and all 60 of their rooms got registered to the cloud. So that can be a really great option for folks. And there might be, again, industry matters a little bit there, right? Like financial, federal, some of those things are important. So there might be a reason for on-prem or some hybrid version. But yeah, there's pros and cons, and Cisco really does provide an elegant option to accommodate for the different industries that are out there.
All right, thank you. That's the last question that I see written or that I have. If none of the customers unmute themselves, then I think we'll be done for the day. That was excellent. Again, remember, you can pull RoomReady in even if you have an existing partner, and I'm a big fan of theirs because I saw what they were trying to do in simplifying the install, and that's really the key thing. And I I have a lot of friends that are AV integrators and I work with them, but there's a bent for the average AV integrator to make things overly complex. And when you have a complex room, you need some complexity. If it's a split room, the RoomReady will come in there and make it as simple as possible from a support and a user standpoint, and they do a phenomenal job.
Thanks, Joe. We appreciate the that high compliment. That's a wonderful endorsement, and we don't take it for granted or take it lightly. It's been years in the making, and so Troy, Joe, thank you for the invite. Really grateful for the opportunity to be able to share and hopefully remove some stress or help people see the pathway forward in the midst of some of the big gotchas that are out there in the market.
Thank you very much, and just a reminder to everybody in the chat, we have the link to join the WebEx team space, and we'll put all the content in there. So thank you for joining, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers.